She was closing up her own pool when a neighbor stormed over, demanding answers. Minutes later, the cops arrived, but they weren't there for who she thought. Sharon took a deep breath as the sun dipped behind the tree line, casting a golden glow over the water. The pool at her boutique rental estate, a property she had poured her heart into for nearly a decade, shimmered in the fading light. It was her ritual. Every evening she'd personally check the chlorine levels, straighten the lounge chairs, and lock up the gates. Guests came here expecting tranquility, and she made sure they got it. She loved this place. It wasn't just a business to her. It was a reflection of years of sacrifice. She remembered the struggle of getting the loan, fighting for permits, and handling every inch of maintenance herself when she couldn't afford to hire help. But all of it had been worth it. Now, the estate was thriving, attracting high-end visitors who appreciated its exclusivity. She adjusted the latch on the pool gate and turned to leave when she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Sharon paused, already knowing where this was going. She turned to see a woman in her mid-50s, arms crossed, standing at the edge of the rental property. She had that look, chin lifted slightly, squinting as if Sharon were an equation she couldn't quite solve. "I'm closing the pool for the evening," Sharon said, keeping her tone even. The woman took a step closer, eyes narrowing. "You work here." Sharon studied her for a second. She knew exactly what this woman was implying, but she wasn't in the mood for games. "I own this property," she said plainly. The woman blinked, as if trying to process the words. Then, without missing a beat, she scoffed. "Oh, really?" Her voice was laced with disbelief. "That's interesting because I happen to know the owner." Sharon tilted her head. "Do you?" "Yes," the woman said firmly. "This is a high-end rental. I don't think the owner would be okay with some random person locking things up." Sharon exhaled slowly, willing herself to stay calm. "I am the owner. My name is Sharon Matthews. I bought this place in 2014. But the woman wasn't listening. She was already reaching for her phone. "You need to leave," she said. "I'm calling the police." Sharon let out a humorless chuckle. "You're calling the police on me? On my own property?" "Exactly. If you really own this place, then you won't mind proving it to the officers when they get here." And just like that, she pressed the call button. But Sharon knew this wasn't about proof. It never was. Sharon crossed her arms, watching as the woman paced a few steps away, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I need officers at the Lakeview estate. There's someone trespassing. She's locking up the pool like she owns the place." The woman's voice dripped with urgency, her free hand waving as if she were giving a play-by-play of a crime in progress. Sharon could hear the muffled response from the dispatcher, though she already knew how this conversation would go. The woman's tone shifted slightly, her confidence flickering. "No, I don't know her name," she admitted. "But she's here, and she refuses to leave." Sharon let out a slow breath, rolling her shoulders back. She had dealt with people like this before. People who assumed, questioned, and policed without reason. But this was something else. The woman turned back to Sharon, eyes gleaming with a smug sense of authority. "The police are on their way," she announced, slipping the phone into her pocket. "I'd suggest you stay put." Sharon raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere." The woman blinked, as if thrown off by the lack of fear in Sharon's voice. "Good," she said, straightening her stance. "Because when they get here, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do." Sharon sighed, glancing toward the row of luxury rental villas. A few guests were outside on their patios, enjoying their evening, sipping wine. One couple had turned their heads toward the commotion, watching with mild curiosity. "Let me get this straight," Sharon said, leveling her gaze at the woman. "You saw me, a black woman, closing a pool, and instead of asking a single follow-up question, you just assumed I didn't belong here." The woman's mouth twisted. "Oh, don't pull the race card." Sharon smirked. "I don't need to pull anything. You did that all on your own." The woman's face darkened. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but I know this property is owned by someone else. I've lived in this neighborhood for 10 years. I know who comes and goes." Sharon let out a soft laugh. "Oh, then what's my name?" The woman faltered. "What? My name? If you know the owner, then you should know my name." The woman's lips parted, but no words came out. Sharon took a step closer, lowering her voice. "You don't, do you?" Because you don't know the owner. You just assumed that someone like me couldn't be. The woman bristled. You're twisting my words. Sharon shook her head. No, I'm laying them out exactly as you said them. The woman glanced toward the road, shifting on her feet. Maybe she was realizing she had made a mistake. Maybe not. But before she could say anything else, the distant wail of sirens broke through the evening air. Sharon sighed. This was about to get interesting. The flashing blue and red lights washed over the estate as 2 patrol cars pulled up near the main entrance. Sharon stood her ground, arms relaxed at her sides, while the woman, who still hadn't bothered to introduce herself, took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and marched toward the officers like she had personally summoned reinforcements. The first officer to step out was a tall man with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor. His partner, shorter but stockier, followed closely behind. Both scanned the area, assessing the situation. The woman wasted no time. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she called, motioning toward Sharon like she was pointing out an intruder. She was trying to close the pool, acting like she owns the place. I told her to leave, but she refused. Sharon let out a slow exhale. "Here we go." The lead officer turned his gaze to her. "Ma'am, do you live here?" "No," Sharon replied evenly. "I own this property." The woman scoffed. "No, she does not." The officer glanced between them, then turned back to Sharon. "Do you have any identification or proof of ownership?" Sharon nodded and calmly reached into her pocket. She wasn't about to make any sudden moves, not with the way things could go south in situations like this. She pulled out her wallet, then handed the officer her driver's license. "I also have property documents inside," she added. "If you'd like, I can grab them." The officer took the ID and studied it before glancing at the woman. "Ma'am, what's your relation to this property?" The woman faltered. "I live nearby. I've seen the owner before, and I know this isn't her." The officer didn't react. He simply turned back to Sharon. "Ms. Matthews, what exactly happened here?" Sharon crossed her arms. "I was locking up my pool, like I do every night, when she gestured toward the woman, decided I didn't belong and called you." The officer's face remained unreadable, but something in his eyes shifted. He looked at Sharon again, his gaze lingering a little longer this time. Then his expression changed, just slightly. "Wait a minute," he muttered, staring at her ID again. His partner leaned over to peek, then raised an eyebrow. "Sharon Matthews," the first officer repeated, almost like he was confirming it to himself. Then, suddenly, his posture relaxed, and his face lit up with recognition. "Oh man," he said, shaking his head. "I know you." The woman stiffened. "What?" Sharon arched an eyebrow. "Do you?" "Yeah." The officer nodded, handing back her ID. "You were on the news a few years back. Didn't you run that community outreach program in Oakland?" Sharon tilted her head slightly, a hint of amusement creeping in. "That depends. Which one?" The officer chuckled. "The one with the scholarship fund. My cousin's kid got a grant through that program." Sharon smiled. Small world. The woman's mouth opened and closed, her confidence cracking just a little. But the officer wasn't done. He turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "And you said she was trespassing?" The woman faltered. I thought she was." "You thought?" The officer's voice was calm but firm. "Did you ask her any questions before calling us?" The woman swallowed hard. I just... But now it was clear. The situation was not in her favor anymore. The woman's confidence wavered as the weight of the officer's words sank in. Her arms, once crossed defiantly over her chest, now hung stiffly at her sides. Her eyes darted between Sharon and the officer, searching for some kind of way out, some justification for what she had done. The officer turned his full attention to her now, his voice steady but firm. "You called us, claiming there was a trespasser, but you never actually checked if she belonged here?" The woman's mouth opened, then closed. I assumed. That's the problem," Sharon interrupted, folding her arms. "You assumed?" The woman let out a nervous breath. "I just thought..." "No, you didn't think," Sharon shot back. "You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You just saw me and that was enough." The second officer, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Ma'am, did she at any point threaten you?" The woman hesitated. "No, but..." "Did she refuse to leave your property?" Another pause. "Well, no, but..." Then why exactly did you feel the need to call the police? The woman's face burned red. I thought I was helping. If she wasn't supposed to be here, then... Sharon let out a humorless chuckle. You were so sure I wasn't supposed to be here that you had no problem calling the cops on me. The first officer sighed, glancing at his partner before shaking his head. This isn't a police matter. Ms. Matthews owns this property. There was no crime, no trespassing, nothing for us to investigate. The woman swallowed hard. I see that now. Sharon narrowed her eyes. Do you? The woman looked like she wanted to say something else, but no words came. The realization of what she had done, how wrong she had been, was settling in. The first officer turned back to Sharon. Ms. Matthews, I apologize for the inconvenience. Sharon exhaled slowly, nodding. I appreciate that. He hesitated before adding, I also just want to say, your work really made a difference for a lot of people. I'm sorry you had to deal with this tonight. The woman's head snapped toward him. Wait. So she's the Sharon Matthews? The second officer let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. Yep. Sharon studied the woman's face as the realization hit. Whatever she had assumed about her, that she was some stranger sneaking around an upscale property, that she couldn't possibly own a place like this, had just been shattered. But the damage was already done. And now it was her turn to sit with the consequences. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. The woman, who had been so sure of herself just minutes ago, now looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Sharon could see it in her eyes, the slow, creeping realization that she had made a fool of herself, that she had humiliated herself. Not Sharon. I didn't know, the woman muttered, her voice quieter now. Sharon tilted her head. Didn't know what? The woman fidgeted. I didn't know you were... You? Sharon let out a sharp laugh. Oh, so if I were just some random woman, you'd still think I didn't belong? The woman's lips pressed together. That's not what I meant. Sharon's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. It's exactly what you meant. She took a slow step forward. Let me guess. You assumed the owner would be someone else. Someone that looked different than me. The woman swallowed hard, saying nothing. The first officer crossed his arms. You know, Ms. Matthews could file a false report complaint against you for this. The woman's eyes widened. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. The second officer shook his head. You wasted our time because you didn't take 5 seconds to ask a question before calling us. The woman's cheeks flushed deep red. I didn't think... Sharon raised a brow. That much is clear. The guests at the estate were still watching from their balconies, whispering. A couple near the pool had pulled out their phones, possibly recording. The woman had made a spectacle, and now she was the center of it. Sharon sighed, shaking her head. You came here with so much certainty, and now? You can't even look me in the eye. The woman glanced toward the patrol cars, like she wanted an escape, but there was none. Sharon inhaled deeply, forcing herself to release the tension building in her chest. She didn't want to waste another second on this woman. She turned to the officers. Are we done here? The first officer nodded. Unless you want to file a complaint. Sharon studied the woman for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. No, she already embarrassed herself enough tonight. The woman flinched. Sharon turned, heading toward her estate. But before she stepped inside, she called over her shoulder, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Next time, think before you pick up the phone. And with that, the night was over. The air outside felt different now, heavier, charged with the kind of energy that lingers after a storm. The officers returned to their cars, their radios crackling as they received another call. With one last glance toward Sharon, the lead officer gave her a respectful nod before sliding into the driver's seat. Sharon didn't return it. She was too tired for pleasantries. The woman, who still hadn't offered her name, stood there, shoulders tense, eyes darting between the retreating patrol cars and the few guests still watching from their balconies. The hum of whispers carried through the night. The very people she had probably wanted to impress were now staring at her like she was the problem. And she was. She shifted uncomfortably, as if she wanted to say something, to fix this, to save face. But what could she possibly say now? Sharon didn't wait for an apology that wasn't coming. She turned on her heel and walked toward her front door. Wait, the woman blurted. Sharon stopped but didn't turn around. The woman hesitated, then sighed. I made a mistake. Sharon exhaled through her nose, gripping the doorknob. Yeah, you did. Another pause. I just thought... The woman trailed off, as if realizing how hollow her excuses sounded. I didn't mean... Didn't mean what? Sharon cut in, finally turning to face her. Didn't mean to call the cops on me. Didn't mean to assume I was a trespasser on my own damn property. The woman flinched at Sharon's sharp tone. I was just trying to look out for the neighborhood, she murmured weakly. Sharon let out a humorless laugh. Were you? Or were you just trying to make sure someone like me knew their place? The woman's face twisted, but she didn't deny it. That's what I thought, Sharon muttered, shaking her head. Go home. The woman lingered for a second longer, as if she still wanted to salvage the situation. But there was nothing left to say. Defeated, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the neighborhood she thought she was protecting. Sharon stood in the doorway for a long moment, letting the cool night air settle around her. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but she wouldn't let it consume her. She had worked too damn hard to let a stranger's ignorance steal her peace, and tonight, that peace was hers to reclaim. Sharon closed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the quiet house. She leaned against it for a moment, exhaling slowly, letting the tension in her shoulders dissolve bit by bit. She wasn't shaken. She refused to be, but the weight of the night sat heavy in her chest. She moved toward the kitchen, reaching for a glass of water, her hands steady despite the anger still humming beneath her skin. This wasn't the first time someone had looked at her and decided she didn't belong. It probably wouldn't be the last. But tonight felt different. Maybe it was because she had built this place from the ground up, pouring years of sweat and sacrifice into making it exactly what it was. Or maybe it was because the woman had been so certain, so unshakably sure that Sharon couldn't possibly own something this beautiful, this successful. And when she realized she had been wrong, she couldn't even say the words, I'm sorry. That was the part that stayed with her. Not the confrontation, not even the officers showing up, but the woman's refusal to admit what was obvious. Sharon took a slow sip of water, her mind drifting to the guests who had witnessed everything. Would they think twice now before making assumptions? Or would they tell the story later, shaking their heads at what had unfolded in front of them? Either way, it didn't really matter. She knew who she was. She knew what she had built. And no one, not some nosy neighbor, not even the police, could take that away from her. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from her assistant, Lena. Everything okay? Heard some guests talking about police at the estate. Sharon smirked, shaking her head as she typed a response. Just a little neighborhood drama. Nothing I couldn't handle. She hesitated, then added, see you tomorrow. Let's talk about adding a Know Your Owner section to the welcome packets. She hit send and set the phone down, glancing toward the window. Outside, the pool was still, its surface reflecting the soft glow of the estate lights. Peaceful, just the way she liked it. Maybe tomorrow the woman would wake up and feel the weight of what she had done. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, Sharon wasn't going to waste another second thinking about her. Because the only thing worse than being underestimated was letting it get to you. Morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of Sharon's bedroom, casting a soft glow across the walls. She had slept well, not because the events of the previous night had been forgotten, but because she had refused to let them hold power over her. By the time she made her way to the kitchen, the estate was already buzzing with quiet movement. Guests were up and about, enjoying their coffee on balconies, strolling through the garden, taking in the serenity of the place she had built. This was why she did it. Not for approval, not to prove anything to anyone, but because she deserved to exist in spaces like this. Because people like her deserved to own, create, and succeed without justification. Her phone chimed. Another message from Lena. You're trending, by the way. Sharon frowned, clicking the link Lena had sent. A video, shaky but clear, showed the confrontation from the night before. She called the cops on the owner. You can't make this up. The caption beneath it was already drawing thousands of comments. Some were angry, some were supportive, and others were the usual mix of deflection and excuses. Sharon sighed, setting the phone down. She had seen it all before. The mental gymnastics people performed to justify behavior like that. The same tired arguments, the same unwillingness to admit the truth. But there was also something else. Messages from strangers saying how much they admired her composure, how they had been in her shoes before, how they wished they had handled it the way she did. That part, that mattered. Lena called a few minutes later, her voice buzzing with excitement. "You're about to be everywhere," she said. A news outlet already reached out. "They want an interview." Sharon pinched the bridge of her nose. "Of course they do. You're gonna do it." Sharon exhaled slowly, thinking, "No, I don't need to." Lena was quiet for a second. "You sure?" Sharon glanced out the window, watching the water ripple in the pool. "Yeah, the video says enough. People can take from it what they want." Another pause, then Lena chuckled. "You know, I always say you're the classiest person I know." "I'd have cussed her out." Sharon laughed. "Trust me, I thought about it." They hung up, and for the first time since the night before, Sharon felt something settle in her chest. Not relief, not anger, just clarity. This wasn't about one woman and her ignorance. It was bigger than that. It was about the everyday choices people made, whether they let their biases dictate their actions, whether they questioned their own assumptions before jumping to conclusions. And maybe, just maybe, someone watching that video would think twice before making the same mistake. She poured herself another cup of coffee, stepping outside to take in the morning air. Another day. Another reminder that no matter what people assumed, she belonged here. And she always had. This isn't just one story. It's a reality too many people face every day. If you've ever been in Sharon's position, you know what it feels like to have someone look at you and decide, without knowing a thing about you, that you don't belong. And if you've ever been on the other side, maybe this is a moment to reflect. Assumptions have consequences. Ask questions. Challenge your biases. And most of all, think before you act. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. These conversations matter, and the more we talk about them, the more we can change.